I've just explained 7 broad habits that you would want to develop in order to build your focusing on reading muscles
over time.
Now I want to dig in a little more to what to do when you're reading in the present. Okay, so we've counted up to 7 principles and practices of. So we've counted up to 7 principles and practices. So now we're at number 8. Be active. In other words, to maintain attention and focus, take notes.
Please note that you may find you need to adjust the following techniques to follow your own preferences or according to the subject matter. There is no right way to read actively.
In the present, while you're reading, taking notes turns an activity that might otherwise be passive into something active because you are having to really activate the information in various ways in order to take notes, even to underline, right? So take note to give you a physical record that you can then go back to and review when you need it. But also take notes in order to be present, be engaged, be thinking while reading. When we're reading, there's a lot of things that we're doing automatically, like decoding letters into sounds, decoding sounds into words into meanings, and tracking with our eyes across and down a page. Those things are happening automatically without any sensation of effort from us, but they are taking effort and resources, and it's not trivial. We're also doing a bunch of kind of semi-conscious activities, like, as I indicated earlier, we are holding things in our memory as we move along. I've just read a sentence, I have to kind of remember it in order to understand the present sentence. And I also have to be doing a little bit of predicting as I'm reading as well. So if I'm reading a present sentence, I'm already anticipating what's going to happen in order to understand that present sentence. It's a little bit of a pass the potato game inside our own brain. So there's memory involved, and there's some kinds of logic and critical thinking involved even at lower levels. As you read, your brain is also pulling out background information that's not really in the sentences themselves, but which is required for you to understand what's being said. Those are all kind of automatic, unconscious, and semi-conscious efforts that we're making that are stacking up on top of each other and adding to more and more cognitive load. While you do all of that, there might have been little questions that were irking you in previous pages, and you're scanning the sentences that you read, waiting to see if the answers to those questions pop up. And at the same time, you're regulating your emotions, you're regulating your stress and your heartbeat and your alertness. And by the way, you're regulating your breathing and all of that sort of thing. So it's a lot for a brain to do all at once. It's no wonder your brain might just kind of sneak off into a back room and take a break from some of those tasks to relieve a little bit of the strain on resources. That's kind of what's happening when you realize you've read a few pages and you actually didn't read them. We probably all have had that experience where we've read a couple of pages and all of a sudden we're like, oh, wait a second, I don't know what I just read. We were caught in some kind of narrow tunnel vision where maybe we were processing the letters and sounds and the decoding kinds of things that we need to do, but we weren't processing meaning. Or we were noticing the meanings of the sentences one at a time, but we weren't holding those meanings in our memory as we went from sentence to sentence, and it doesn't add up to anything at the end. And we might have been kind of losing focus in a way such that we didn't even realize that we had lost our focus until we get those few pages away. The reason that that kind of inattentive reading happens is because of the really significant cognitive load involved in reading. So with that in mind, if I'm asking you to write notes, aren't I asking you to just add more to your cognitive load? Well, yes, but while taking notes, you are searching and reaching and building and sorting and associating and prioritizing. That is,
you're using more of your visual thinking processes in addition to your verbal thinking processes.
So although note-taking can require a little more cognitive effort and take a little more time, note-taking also adds a whole other set of cognitive channels you can use to process, reinforce, and store what you're engaging with. In other words, another area of the brain that you can use to think with. One of the things that we do when we're taking notes is we're chunking knowledge. We're packaging things up into parcels. You're figuring out, for example, how to describe something that's been said by the author in a lot of words into fewer words. When you do that, all that tons of stuff that you had to process becomes one thing, one chunk, one parcel, And that's something that's going to be much more easy for you to remember and access later on. For example, when you identify a theme or some kind of idea that you find in many pages in the work that you're reading, if you can kind of just put an asterisk in your margin notes that says, here's the theme again, then what you're doing there is you are grouping multiple elements together and creating more stability by making this connection of like one unified thing. Another area of benefit is that being involved in a more physically active and cognitively active activity, other than just the reading itself, actually literally can turn your brain state into something different. You can move from a kind of receptive, relaxed state where stress and alert systems are turned down to an active and activated state where your alert systems and your arousal systems are dialed up. So note taking can kind of cut off some of those all too easy to slip into escape routes
for your attention. That is,
if you're coding or mapping or outlining while you read, then by definition, you are paying attention. And really, that's why I always take notes. I take notes even though I'm not a student anymore. I take notes on lectures or podcasts or things that I'm reading pretty regularly because I know that my attention is fragile. And I know that if I really stay activated by taking notes, I will be able to focus even if I never have to write something about the topic that I'm hearing about, or I never am going to have an exam on that topic. Even if I'm probably never going to read those notes again, I write notes. If you're taking notes for the purpose of maintaining attention and staying activated, there will come a time when you will need to put those notes to work. But while you're doing the reading right now and the note taking right now, you may not know exactly what you need to record or how you're going to use these notes. So you don't need to write things down in substantial phrases. You don't need to copy down long quotes. Basically, you want to make enough marks on the page so that future you, when going back to the original text and your notes, doesn't have to re-chew the same hard, gritty foods. You want to pre-digest the text a little bit.
So there are 3 great reasons to take notes. We've just covered 2 of them. 1, because taking notes can be strategic. If you are taking notes well, note-taking can be an activity that helps you maintain attention, alertness, and focus. And 2, because the specific kinds of things that you're doing when you're taking notes well enhance your learning in deep and not so obvious ways. And the third reason to take notes is maybe the most obvious reason to take notes, even though it may not be so obvious how to do this effectively and well. And that is, you take notes in order to then have notes. Notes that you can use later when you need to review the material. Now, in the next video, we'll talk about exactly how to take notes effectively, what to take notes on, what the note-taking can look like, and a few other questions and answers.